Well, welcome back to the garden. I had big plans to start my spring garden this year, but I don't think that's gonna be happening. Instead, we're gonna talk more about some planning for your spring garden. Spring garden vegetables are very different from summer vegetables. And when you go to a garden center, it can be pretty confusing because you see all of these seed packets from lettuce to tomatoes to corn to sunflowers, and how are you supposed to know when to plant these things and if it's even best to plant by seed or a transplant. Vegetables that are best by seed are the quick growers. Lettuce, all kinds of lettuce, kale, spinach, carrots, radishes, turnip greens, and mustard greens. All really fun things that we probably eat on a daily basis, or maybe we should. Plants that are best as a transplant would be broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, brussel sprouts, potatoes, onions, and celery. If you don't know what a transplant is, you would buy these at a garden center. They have been growing for 6 to 8 weeks at this point. The reason it's best to start some of these plants as a transplant versus a seed is it takes them so long to get to the point of production that you would have to start those plants in a greenhouse 6 to 8 weeks before you even wanted to plant them in the ground. And most of us don't have a greenhouse. If you want to get creative, there are some pretty crafty things you can do with your leftovers in the kitchen that are some of the most fun ways to garden. If you have potatoes, leftover potatoes, if you look closely at the little eyes of the potatoes, eventually if you've let them sit for too long and maybe they're starting to go bad, these little eyes will start to sprout. And that's when it's okay to, we have a guest star, Andy Griffith the cat. That's when it's okay to plant these. You can actually cut off that piece and stick it in the ground, and a potato plant will grow, and then eventually at the end of the season, more potatoes like this will be buried underground. So you just take something that you're getting rid of anyway, put it in the ground, and then you have 5 or 6 more potatoes just like that. Another cool thing to do is to take garlic. If you take one of these cloves, which this is a very large piece of garlic, if you take one off and if you planted that in the ground, just about a couple inches in the ground, eventually at the end of the season, this one little garlic clove would turn into this underground. So you've taken one little piece and multiplied it into potentially 10 or more. One of the things that I'm most excited about this spring, I bought some celery at the store. Once I had used all of the celery, I cut the bottom part off where all of the celery meets, and I put it in a clear glass jar with water in it. I think that was about 3 weeks ago, and now I have celery growing. So it doesn't look super pretty, but these stalks came from nothing. When I put this in water, it was just a straight, flat top of celery. This is something you could do also for your spring garden, just taking your leftover kitchen scraps. Start thinking about your spring garden. I'll have a full list of what's best by seed and what's best by transplant in the notes below. Remember, gardening is simple. It does not have to be complicated. So we're here to simplify things, and let me know how I can help you get started this spring as soon as the weather warms up. Thanks for tuning in, y'all. I hope you learned something for your spring garden. I'm sorry we couldn't dig in the dirt this week, but it's gonna happen next week. I feel it for sure. Let me know if you have any questions. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any updates, and I'll see you next week in the garden.